welcome to On the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs both grow their businesses and increase their enterprise value of their companies. Today, we're talking with Michael Kron, chairman of Guardian CRE, a general partner of several commercial real estate limited partnerships, and also the COO of Management Support, which is a private company that has a bunch of multifamily real estate assets as well. So hi, Mike. Good to have you here today.
Absolutely, Peter. Good to be with you.
So let's get to it. So in our discussions, you had talked about that you were from an entrepreneurial background, but you really went through a traditional sort of route, sort of undergrad and then getting a law JD MBA, and you set out to be a lawyer. So what brought you back into sort of the more entrepreneurial space and ultimately residential real estate development?
I think, Peter, right from the beginning, I knew I always wanted to be in the real estate world. We started when I was in college. My dad and I bought a little 6-unit apartment building that I managed and had to learn how to go get tenants, how to make them happy, how to do the maintenance and all that other good stuff. I had a friend of mine who a little later on, we started buying little buildings in the neighboring community of Ypsilanti and renovating those and doing it. So I kind of always had that bug to be there. But when I got into the JD MBA program, my dad, who was a lawyer, had said, practice law for a while, just get the experience. Being the proper son that I was, I listened to him and took his advice and went out and moved to LA and practiced real estate law and land use for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was pretty sure that was definitely not where I wanted to go. And at the same time, my father-in-law at the time was building up his apartment business. And he said, look, I need somebody to come work for me, to be my right-hand man, because the banks we're getting bigger. The banks are starting to worry about what happens if I'm not here. And I'd like you to come and help me run the business. And that was just too good an offer to pass up.
Right. And so how we know kind of where it is today, but how big was the business at that time?
We had somewhere around 2,500 units.
Okay.
Most of them were in California, and I'd say some of the less desirable areas. We had one in Hawthorne. I used to have to go down to Inglewood Court. I still did the unlawful detainers for us at the time. But he had about 2,500 units. He had just started to get into Texas. Mm-hmm. And he went down there in the late 80s when you could fire a cannon through Texas and not hit much. And he started going down there and buying things. And that, if you remember those days, was the days of the government, monopoly, the FDIC, the FSLIC, right, the RTC. He was buying a property and starting to get bigger down there. And he had actually brought a regional manager down there to start helping him run that region. So when I got there, we had about 2,500 units. What I was able to help him with was to start unwinding our California portfolio. And, we had C property in California, and we had B and A property in Texas. Mm-hmm. And we started buying in Phoenix, and I was able to help him unwind that using 1031 exchanges and starting to grow his portfolio in those other regions. And ultimately, we got to the point where we're now out of California entirely, except for our main office.
So the legal background actually probably really helped you, do all those transactions and work on moving the portfolio down to the southwest as opposed to being on the coast.
Absolutely.
That's good. And now you're, 13,000 units or something like that, a very, very big business. So your role was sort of doing the transactions and then development work, correct? I mean, you have to go from 2,500 up to 13,000. So what was your role at that as the years passed?
I was always running the operational side of the business, and because of my background, doing a lot of the purchase and sale work for him, doing the financing and negotiating with the banks and doing that. But we came to a point in mid 90s where we owned a property in North Dallas that had 20 acres next to it that we had no idea what to do with. We tried to sell it. We had cross easement problems and everything. And finally, we just said, well, why don't we just build some more units on it? We certainly know what to do with apartment units. And that was really the beginning of our development role. Now, the problem was at that point, neither one of us knew much technical about building apartments.
Mm-hmm.
We knew theoretical, we knew how to run them once we got them. And I went to my law firm in Dallas. A real good friend of mine is our real estate lawyer. And I said, Jeff, who would you recommend I talk to? And he said, we have a guy for you. He had done this for years, built tall buildings, built everything. He had gone away and now he's back and he's trying to get back into it. And that started really a 20-year relationship with a gentleman who's unfortunately passed away. But he taught me a great deal about how to develop property. The first thing he did is he took our plans that our architect had, put them through his system and said, Mike, the four walls of the buildings don't meet.
Good to know early. When it's
that is absolutely good to know before you start building things.
Yeah.
That architect was fired promptly and we hired another one. And so began the journey of learning all the ins and outs. And we did that. We had 3 properties that had land next to them that we were able to acquire or had acquired. And we built additional units on each of those. And we suddenly said, this is working pretty well. Why don't we start looking for land? Mm-hmm. And we found a couple of pieces of land in San Antonio. That's where we built our first standalone projects, developed both of those. And it just started to roll where, because of the nature of our business, I mean, we're a family office, we can move at our own speed. We didn't have to find 5, 6, 10 parcels of land and constantly have a churn. We needed to find the ones that we really, really liked and really wanted to build on. And we'd build one project at a time. Sometimes we'd have 2 going on at the same time, but really never more than that. And, through the years, we were able to build some very attractive apartment complexes. And, we started building in San Antonio and Dallas. Then we moved to Arizona, and we've now we're working on our 4th project in Arizona.
Wow.
The greater Phoenix market, which we love.
Excellent. So you're on top of this nice portfolio, cash flowing, doing well in growing parts of the country, probably low, high occupancy and doing well. And then, I don't know, later you come across and you start to foray into commercial real estate. So what attracted you to move from your traditional investment class into this new class, which is commercial real estate and actually retail in most cases? What was the play there for you, Mike?
I think there were a lot of things that were going on at the time. I was blessed. We've got a wonderful team at Management Support who's able to run things, and my involvement is on the bigger issues that come up through the day. Mm-hmm. So I had some bandwidth, and I'd always wanted to try to do something on my own. And starting my own private equity company was really the way that I thought I wanted to proceed. So we started looking at this, and I've been following the net lease retail market for quite a while. I own a Walgreens in Tempe that I bought on the back end of an exchange, which I've owned for years. So I've followed that market pretty closely. And we started at a point where we had to decide how we wanted to jump into the private equity world. Mm-hmm. Did I want to jump in the multifamily area? Did I want to jump into something that I really knew tremendously well and had lived for years? Or did I want to do something else? And I think 2 things hit all at once. One was that while we were doing this, there was a lot of choppiness in the multifamily market. We were going through some very, very good years post-COVID. It's in the 30 years I've been there, the years following COVID were probably the best, not because we needed to raise rents or do that, but because people weren't moving. And when people don't move, you have a limited supply of apartments available. So there was a lot going on, but the values were getting really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt uncomfortable about being able to jump into that at that moment in time and be able to do well for our investors. The net lease retail, on the other hand, really struck me as being both a very, very safe play, one that I knew that I could execute well and be able to provide a return for our investors that I had promised them. And it was also an area where, based on the timing, we could do very well on the back end in terms of an overall return. Now, timing being what it is, we decided we were going to launch in 2022. And if you remember, that's when the Federal Reserve decided it was time to start raising interest rates.
Right.
And that was an immediate timeout.
Right.
I looked at the guy who runs, I own a brokerage, that's what we do. I looked at him, I said, we can't do this. If we do this, we're going to be upside down in a heartbeat. And that's, if we ever want to have fund two, this is not the way to start fund one.
Right.
So we had to pull it off the table, which is an expensive proposition, to say the least. But I still, to this day, feel it was the right thing to do. And we've come back. We finally launched at the end of last year when I felt the Fed had reached the pinnacle of its interest rate cycle. And, you know, if you follow the interest rate cycles, they tend to go, they don't change direction very often. They
Right.
tend to go for a while.
Then,
So I felt once the Fed raised or got to the top of the cycle, we could launch and we'd start seeing a downward trend in the interest rates. And the net lease retail of all of the real estate sectors is the most highly correlated to interest rate movements of any of them. And in large part because you're dealing with essentially a fixed return. They act like bonds in many respects.
Right.
So we felt, okay, if we can enter at the top of the cycle, we can produce a 5 to 6%, 6.5% cash flow coupon, you know, with no real risk. We're not coming back to the partners and asking them for additional capital calls. We know that we're going to be covered from day one and onwards. But if things move the way we expect, we could see a pretty good IRR at the end of the day, you know, into the upper teens, which for a safe investment play is kind of nice.
And I think the underlying thing was that you were getting great credits on the other side. You were getting high quality tenants that were not gonna, you know, they were less correlated maybe to Amazon, and I don't know if that was part of your thesis, but would provide you with a very stable cash flow, and then you could ride appreciation if rates came your way. This is what it sounds
Yeah,
like.
no, that was exactly the thought process.
Yeah.
I mean, we picked 14 tenants in 7 industries that were all Amazon resistant businesses. We didn't want to fight the 1,000-ton gorilla.
Right.
And they were also all credit tenants, which distinguishes us from, you know, the other players, the Store Capital, Agree Realty, Blue Owl, Ares and Apollo are in this space.
Mm-hmm.
The best of those are about 65% credit tenant. And to us, you know, I could maybe get 25 or 50 basis points more return, but was it worth the risk to me or to our investors to be able to sleep at night and know that these tenants aren't going out of business?
Right. So stepping back to you, now you've got, you know, you're raising a fund, obviously, to take advantage of this opportunity, and you've got the COO role with a large, you know, multifamily real estate company. How do you juggle the two, and how does, you know, what is it that, what have you made the other business self-managing such that you really don't have to do much over there, or what? How does that work?
You know, I think you get to a point, and I always laugh. I look at people like Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey as sort of role models. I said, you know, if they can run all the businesses that they can run at that level, I should be able to run 2 things at the same time without as long as you're willing to put in the effort. But I think the reality of it is that over time you learn how to use your time effectively and do the things that need to be done and pay attention to the things that require your attention, and leave the details, the little things, to other people who you've trained well and can run with it. I know a lot of people who need to be involved in every last little detail of every last little thing. And that's just a recipe for disaster in my mind. I've always been the bigger picture thinker. I like setting up processes for, we have a policy manual at our apartment family office that, if you have a question, it's probably answered there for you, because there aren't really a lot of new questions. There's just, how do you handle the old question that's come up again? We've been able to hire a lot of great people. I'm building 760 units in Gilbert right now, but I have a director of construction who is hands-on every day, all day. He's there. I come in once a month to make the big decisions. He's there once every 2 weeks or once a week for 2 or 3 days to keep his eyes on what's going on and keep his eyes on all the little details. You have to have those people to be able to branch off and do other things. And it's no different where I am on the private equity side. I have people who can handle the basics. I need to make the big decisions and do the big things.
Yeah, it's a great, many of the business owners and founders that I deal with cannot remove themselves and get to the point where you are, and have difficulty with the trust of putting people in charge, allowing them, empowering them, making them mini CEOs, training them up well enough so that they can own that area, like your construction individual you're talking about, so that you can leave them with that type of autonomy to make the decisions and know that the bases are covered. And it really gives you a lot of peace of mind. And many of the things I do in my coaching business is to try to get the owner to get those people in place, get those right people in place, and then enable them through training and letting them make mistakes candidly, so that you can leave feeling comfortable that they're the right people for the job, and then you can think bigger and do another business. I mean, I can't imagine what Elon Musk or the others would do when he's in the White House for a few months, and the business is running along. So that's it's a great skill, and it's something I see a lot of people really struggle with, but it's incredibly empowering and freeing if you can do it.
I
So
think
go ahead.
I think you probably have talked to some of your clients and used this, and if not, you're welcome to. But it's the difference between having a job and owning a business.
Yeah.
If you want, you can have a job and think you own a business, but that's not really owning the business. If you own the business, you have to delegate and have other people doing things.
Right. So let's fast forward to today, and you're looking ahead. You've launched this new business. You're in the market. So what do you see as how do you see this rolling out? What's your objectives 3 years from now? What would you like the world to look like? And then what are the barriers you see to getting there?
I think, for us, we've launched the fund already. We have our friends and family money in.
Mm-hmm.
We've deployed that. We're now out raising capital. We want to raise $100 million. And we can roll it out as the money comes in. And, we've given ourselves 2 years, but really, I think within 12 to 14 months, we would have liked to have raised the full amount and deployed it. And in our space, that's pretty easy to do because the deals are plentiful. Once we've fully deployed this fund, we'll be on to putting together fund 2. And that, to us, is how you grow this business. Once you show that you can raise money and deploy it successfully, then you're open to the next thing. Whether we look at big box retail, we look at strip centers, I think is really going to be dependent upon the timing and what seems to be the cycle we're in at that time. If I've learned nothing in being in the real estate world for 30 plus years, is that everything runs in cycles, and it's usually a good idea to pay attention to those cycles because you can really get beat up if you don't. So we're looking to grow this into a multi-fund. At some point, yes, I do want to do a multifamily fund. That, obviously is near and dear to my heart. But I can also wait for the right time to do that. And that requires more capital. And quite frankly, the most difficult thing, and I always tell people this, if I ever do this again, I'm going to start with fund 2, because fund 1 is ridiculously hard. You don't get the attention of a lot of players when you're on your first fund. Why? It's just built into the cake. The institutional people just have a mandate that they won't deal with somebody who's working on their first fund. Forget that I've run for 32 years, I've run 14,000 apartment units.
Right. Very, very transferable knowledge, and having developed them too. So yes, I would think that would weigh in your favor. But today it's always hard to start anything.
It is. So we're grinding and doing what we need to do to become successful, and I have a lot of confidence that we will. But it's a lot of work, and that's been a hurdle that I'd love to say I didn't think I'd appreciate, but it's been a little bit bigger than I thought it would be.
Right. So, I mean, just to sort of bring that together, I mean, the investment is, you've got good credits on the one side. You haven't leveraged them too aggressively. You've got a pretty conservative debt profile on them, and passing on the cash flow for a very stable, a stable return. And it's just a matter of getting people to buy into this coupon story with appreciation at the end, which could follow the cycle. It seems to be where it's going.
That's pretty true. We're coming out of some cycles which are interesting in that respect. I think 2024 for a lot of private equity folks was a lost year because everybody was very unsure about what was going to happen, both economically, politically, internationally. I think that's stabilized a bit, and people are a little more comfortable with where things are going. Mm-hmm. I think we also came out of a period post-COVID, which saw some outsized returns. And if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, you were able to do exceptionally well. If you started getting in at the end of that cycle, say in late 23 and 24, you're probably a little bit upside down now. And the expectations of investors had to come back to earth. And I think they're starting to coalesce together where investors are a little more realistic about what they want. And, the safety of what we're doing is a little more attractive, and that will happen. But, it's been an interesting 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll persevere like you have through many cycles. So, great. So, Michael, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, your company, look at the investment, what's the best way for them to reach out and reach you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is by email, mike@guardian-advisory.com. I answer my email every day. If you email me, I will guarantee you'll get a response right away. But that's the best way to look at it.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on, and we wish you luck in the future fundraising. And thanks for everybody to listening on the Entrepreneur's Journey today. Thanks.
Peter, it's been enjoyable.
Thank you.